Well, let's start off with the real estate story of the week.
Oh, geez.
This one's actually a really good one. I did this really cool thing for a challenge for junior high 2 years ago before COVID. Met the principal, one of the teachers there, and they were starting this series of having like entrepreneurs or people come in and like talk to the kids because they did these video announcements. And
Is this your OTB moment of the week?
My OTB moment of the week. I'm going to go on that point in just a minute, though. So make sure I come back. Make sure I come back. Make sure I don't forget.
Okay.
But anyway, so I met the principal there, and one of the teachers is a longtime friend, but she called yesterday. So this is 2 years later. She got this great friend who is was on life support last week and has to go into a home and all this other stuff. But she had this house and she can't go back to the house, and she's the executor of her estate. But the house has a few friends that it comes with.
Yeah.
So you pull up to the house and everything looks normal, and you go inside, and they were explaining to me the amount of rats that have been in this house.
Oh, boy.
Like dead rats under the master bedroom mattress.
Stop it.
It's very sad sometimes when I see some of these things, when I come up to some of these houses. But my point to all that, which is kind of going to lead into our topic, is that there was a need for this certain solution, and the house has a ton of stuff in it that is all contaminated. Yeah. It's not any good.
Biohazard.
You can't donate it. Biohazard. But this was the first one I've had, many, many visitors of rats, not during the appointment, but you could see some of the damage they had caused. One of the things that I was just trying to tell her, she's like, well, I met with this person, and this is what they were going to offer me. And I'm like, here is some of the issues just to be aware of. She called me for more than one opinion, obviously buying it, what can be done with it. But she also wanted an opinion because of some of the other people that had come over. And I said, well, here's what's going to happen. They're going to make an offer, and the price is going to seem very good. And then they're going to come back with a due diligence period or an inspection period, and they're going to get you to an emotional state of the contract accepted, and now they're going to ask you for a reduction based on condition, even though they've seen it, and then you're going to kind of feel stuck.
Yeah.
And sure enough, this morning, just before we got on here, I got an email, and in there, clear as day, was, hey, we can offer you this much, but we need 5 days to get our electrician and plumber in there to make sure that we don't have to replace all the wiring in the house, which means it was already going to be set up for the reduction. Yeah. So anyway, I was able to just give her the offer based on what I saw yesterday, solve the problem. She's a principal, and she's dealing with this for this good friend of hers. And so what I was kind of leading with that is into the topic today, which is, you're going to love this. Ready?
Okay. I'm a little nervous. What if I don't have anything to say?
I think our own industry
Yeah.
has given the iBuyers a platform to basically make us look really bad in the industry. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was just reading an article this week, and maybe that wasn't the correct terminology, but they're utilizing all these things, and I think this is partial real estate agent and partial consumer fault with what I'm reading in this
perception
article.
and how we conduct ourselves.
So the iBuyers have gone down this road of giving this perception that somebody is saving money by not paying a real estate agent,
right?
And they're going to make it really easy,
right? And
all these other things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what are the three tenets somebody wants when they're selling? Ease, quick, and costs.
Right.
Right.
Well, I think the biggest thing is certainty.
Certainty, yeah. I forgot that one.
Okay. So I'm reading this article this week because OfferPad is going public.
Yep.
Right. So they're going to be a public company. So now you've got 3 public companies that are willing to buy a home. Right. They're willing to solve your quick problem because real estate agents have supposedly, not done a great job, and so they want it easier. So they're trying to take the pain out of using a real estate agent to sell a house. My thought as I was being sleepless, I'm like, how much of a problematic real estate transaction actually goes back to the consumer and the fact that they chose the real estate agent who they met at a kid's birthday party and never did any background on that person, and now they end up with a problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that probably happens a lot.
Well, and so here's kind of my point to all of it. The consumer is seeing, and because the iBuyers have a very large coffers of money,
right,
when it comes down to advertising and packaging things pretty and all this other stuff.
And they don't make that much money.
They don't make any money. They don't make any money on the purchase and sale of a house. No. They're making money on ancillary stuff. They are negative. But what's happening is the perception is it's going to make it easy. The reality it is they're giving them no different of an offer that it would be putting the house on the market. They're still charging them. They're just calling it something different. They're calling it a convenience fee, which is between 6 and 12%, depending on the house, which is no different than what a real estate agent charges. And then they still do an inspection, and they still knock off $10,000 to $20,000 worth of repairs. So why is it that the consumer is so irritated about paying a real estate agent 6% to sell their house on the open market and having some repairs and going through the process than it is selling it to a corporation?
It's so funny, isn't it? We've had this conversation so many times.
I know, but it's a perception.
It's perception. It's mindset, perception, education, knowledge. I think that when people are first engaged in doing something with an iBuyer, they think it looks so easy, and then it's like every step of the way they get more and more costs affiliated with their transaction.
It goes back to the same thing that I talked to that client about is they get you here.
It's exactly that.
They get you under contract, and then they kind of go down those roads.
Yep.
And, you know, and I read this, and I'll be really honest with you. I understand the tech side of trying to make things easier. You know, we can order our coffees online. They make all these things smoother when it comes down to it. I get it. But the reality is what none of these companies do is there's no guidance. And I think that that's really what I want to get to with the agents is that if you want to combat and compete in this market that we talk about pivoting and going through things, you have to have more than one mindset on how to get the consumer where they want for what they want.
Yep. Yeah. For sure. That means that you have to do your homework. You can't just know everything that it takes for your systems and processes if you're the agent, but understanding how all the other competitors operate too, whether it's another agent that's like trying to take market share in the area that you're farming, or one of these iBuyers, really truly understanding what the cost analysis is. Like find a closing and look at what each of those line items look like. Find out what their process looks like, put yourself through that, because that's how you're going to win too. You can't just be so great at like what you do. You have to understand how other people do what they do too.
Right. And
then educate.
And educate. But I think the real estate community, if we're going to, the iBuyers are there. They're going to be there.
They're always going to be there. Okay. They're in the game with us.
They're getting to the consumer before the consumer wants to call a real estate agent. And I think part of that is the consumer doesn't necessarily want to be sold on something, and they feel like they're being charged for something. Mm-hmm. But I think if the consumer would start realizing that the person you choose to guide you through this next stage in your life is extremely important, and the consumer needs to do more due diligence on who they're talking to or talk to more people.
Do you think that like for some of these consumers, dealing with a corporation as opposed to a face actually makes them engage more? Because I agree with you. I think that the iBuyers are really good at getting a consumer to engage in real estate or get curious about it. Like they were outside the circle, now they're inside the circle, because they will, reply to the mailer, get online, they'll do something. But I think there's a certain degree of anonymity that they like because they're not dealing with a person in the very beginning when they're engaging with one of these iBuy companies.
Oh, agreed. It's the same reason that I would rather go online and look at cars than walk into a car dealership.
Yeah, because when you have a face-to-face or a conversation or voice-to-voice with anybody, any human, you're suddenly connected on another level.
Agreed.
Right? So if as practitioners, we're able to capture the attention of these consumers once they've been kind of brought into the circle, like if we can close that gap, that would be such a great, a different experience for the consumer.
And I think more so from the consumer side is that if they call a real estate agent, they're afraid to be sold.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid to be like walked down this road. And I think that's where I've tried to take my business is I want to be a voice of reason and be there to answer the questions and be able to guide through the current scenario. See, what most people think is, you know, our real estate license is that we're supposed to go in and get the highest amount of money for the person, like whatever at all costs.
Right.
The reality is the highest amount of money for the circumstances they're currently in or the condition of the property is in is really what the job is.
Yep.
But there's also the guidance of what else can be done in this scenario. That house yesterday, I guarantee you none of the iBuyers would have touched. There's too much unknown.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of personal property that's coming with it. There's varmints that coming with it. There's unknown of electrical and plumbing.
Varmints.
Right. Varmints. Varmints.
Where's Wile E. Coyote?
Yeah. They wouldn't have touched it. And most real estate agents, if they would have walked into that particular appointment, there's like, what is the solution? They really don't know.
Totally.
They don't know what direction.
Or they would just walk away. They'd be like, peace out.
Because somebody's asking for guidance, like, hey, what should we do here?
Right.
But here's the other facet of it that I think agents try to play hero in it. And I remember doing it when I was early on, and I don't know why as agents we set ourselves up to become like a concierge. You know, we start, oh yeah, you know what? We can get these people in here and we can help you with this. And you're like, are you saying all that to get the listing? And do you realize what you just signed up for?
Yeah.
Rather than, what if we can take this particular property down a couple of different roads? What works best for you? So the questions for her were, is there a timing issue? Okay.
Right.
Yes, we need to do this right away. Okay, well, that's a trigger, which means going to open market, doing those things, probably not a great idea. The other thing that we talked about was, what if we put this on the market? Well, here's the things you're going to have to deal with. You're going to deal with uneducated buyer's agents that are going to, number one, walk through this and be mortified.
Mm-hmm.
Their investors are going to lowball stuff. You're still going to deal with the inspection period where somebody's going to want to hammer it again. So there's all these things that are unknowns. There's no certainty again. And it's not going to conform with her timing. She wants to get done. So the solution that I provided was a done, certain, non-refundable earnest money at time of execution of contract. I've looked at the house. This is what it's going to look like. So I solved for that. But the other question that I had for her yesterday was, you know, hey, the lady that you're an executor, is there any reason that we might want to keep this as a rental? It just doesn't make sense, right?
Okay.
So there's nothing there. They're also trying to solve for long-term care. The cash out of the house is going to cover long-term care. It's expensive, so that's kind of the goal. So I know what the goal is there. But then we also talked about repairing the house. You know, Wendy was there as the contractor looking at it saying, I'm going to have to put $100,000 into this house. Does anybody have the $100,000 to put into this house to get more money out of it? So even if you put $100,000 into it, you're going to get it closer to retail, but you're not going to get it. And I always advise my clients, if you have to do repairs, for every dollar you put in, you want to get $2 back on the sale, or else you're just fixing it up for somebody else.
Yeah.
And you're also causing, you know, creating a potential liability where you're doing repairs, you're changing things. Now you have like this disclosure. So, you know, point is that I was kind of walking them through all the different situations to get all the way back to like, will you just buy the house? And I think this is where, as agents in our business, it's, you know, it kind of goes back to some of like talking about net worth and cleaning rental properties. These are the situations that we get into where we can absolutely compete as a human being against the computer by giving them all their options.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
having the patience and the desire to do that.
Right.
Well, and also the know-how, right? A lot of people just don't even know what those solutions are.
Right.
They could never even be able to provide them. They just don't have the experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where reputation wise with a lot of agents with me is that when they get into that situation or they go on that appointment, they don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually where I get that phone call of, hey, I have this client or I have this appointment and I'm going to need your help to solve for this. So they're essentially bringing me along as the cash buyer. I get one look and I make the agreement and everybody wins at that point, but also helping the agent see
how to do it. Yeah.
Like, how does this look and how do I solve for my client? Because if you leave, I recently had another appointment out in Mesa with an agent. He's like, hey, I got this client. They just want a cash offer. They want to know what we can do. He's like, I don't know what to do with this. So he was really smart. He reached out and he's like, hey, will you go with me?
Isn't it so funny how smart you are when you don't know anything?
Right. So I go with him and he calls and it's like, and again, it's a mindset thing with the agent. What do I need to prepare? I'm like, nothing.
Talk.
We need to see what the situation is before you go spend a bunch of time on what it is, which is one of the reasons in this day and age, I don't have a listing presentation because the listing presentation is a, sorry guys, it's me. It's an ego thing. Like a listing presentation typically is like this ego book.
That's definitely the ego book is great. I love that. It's so true. It's so old school. I mean, you see a lot
I watched my dad do it, right? And that's probably why I call it the ego book because I remember that 5-ring binder and I'm like,
oh my gosh.
God, all we did was talk about ourselves the whole time.
Well, and it's so interesting is that you wonder if the audience then was interested in learning about your merit, right? Like your proof of production in terms of being able to brag about yourself. But I've seen some of these listing presentations when I first got into the business where I was just like, that's cool. So do you want to know anything about me or my house or?
Right. So it just, I go back to not doing the listing presentation for a couple of different reasons. So, really, really listen to this, ladies, guys, is I don't go in with a briefcase. I don't go in my laptop. I don't go in anything on the initial appointment because I want to get comfortable with the people and really talk about the house, their scenario, and then figure out what it is. Now, if I need to go deeper into it with them, I will ask to be excused to go to my car to get my briefcase, my laptop. So that, back to this appointment that I went on with that agent, we walked in the door and the girl was super busy and she's like, so what do you got? What will you offer me? Like, I need to be out of here in like 3 weeks and I can't fix any of this stuff. The carpet's bad. The paint's bad. I just want to get out. I'm like, okay, cool.
You're like super.
Can I look at the house for a minute? She's like, sure. I'm going to go back up in my office. I got some work to do. And then just let me know when you want to talk again. Okay, awesome. So we start walking around and we're talking and I'm looking at things. And I pop open my laptop and I look and I'm like, okay, so the house is on the market 6 months ago for $375 and this, that, and the other. And I'm looking at other comps. So I text her. I'm like, hey, can you come down for a minute?
Oh my God, that's so funny.
It was funny. So she comes down. I'm like, so if we gave you this price and you could move in 4 weeks and it's as is, nothing else. She's like, great. Where do I sign? Like, this was a 15-minute appointment. She got a good amount of equity. She left a good amount of equity, but she doesn't have to do repairs. Completely solved her problem. But if he had gone in with like a listing appointment, she didn't want to hear it.
Right.
She already tried it 6 months ago.
That's just like really good emotional intelligence, right? You can come into any situation prepared, but you have to pivot and you have to figure out like who your audience is and then recognize that, okay, that approach is not going to work today. You got to just pay attention to who you're in front of.
Right.
I mean,
and I know that you can get some of that through conversation with people before you go on the appointment. And I know that a lot of people teach, like, try to get as much information so you can be prepared. I just feel in what I do is I try to set the time with the person and then go get to know them because I think it's easier to, facial expressions and emotion and those types of things and really get into what's going on. And then once you know what's going on, now you can present the solution.
Totally.
Which it might be putting it on the market. It might be, selling it as is, any of those things.
Yeah.
So
it's a pivot.
Right.
Right. I mean, and at least your approach going in is your number one desire is to get to know the person or the people or the owners or whoever, right? Whatever the group is. You know, I love the whole, like, I leave my briefcase in the car. I think that's super
I
good.
don't even have a briefcase. It's a backpack.
Whatever.
But I do want to, I kind of want to leave on this unless you've got more to add to this, but I kind of want to end on this. I think the consumer needs to do a better job of thinking about who they're going to use in the most expensive purchase or sale.
Mm-hmm.
And while the iBuyers present a certain type of solution, they're not giving you all the different options that are available. They're a one-stop shop of this is what we do. Mm-hmm. We buy your house. These are the terms. This is what it looks like. And here's what I thought of last night.
Well, and the full exposure of all the costs, not just
right
the acquisition or disposition, but like all the other costs.
Right. So part of what this article was talking about was the iBuyers like, oh, you shouldn't have to pay that much of your equity to sell your house. And I don't know that I totally disagree with what they're saying, but the funny thing is they're using the same 6 to 10% that a real estate agent charges yes. as a discount on the other end. Yeah. So you're really not
you're not
saving anything. Actually, they've just found a different place to put it on the contract.
They're just speaking a different language.
Right, so they've just packaged it differently.
Totally.
So I just think it's really important that there are levels of real estate agents out there, and here's kind of where I was going with that. You might pay somebody 6%, but my question is, what is the value of that 6% in that person's experience, mm-hmm. right? That is the one thing that I don't understand about this business is that you can walk out of real estate school after 90 hours and you can go to the bar and talk to the person that's had a couple cocktails and tell them, I'm a realtor, I can sell your house and charge them 6%, which is the same amount of money that I would typically charge for a client. The only difference is I have 21 years of experience on it. So not all real estate agents are created equal.
Right.
And I think if you're looking for something discounted service because you're using somebody newer, then knock yourself out, but just mm-hmm. know what comes with that lack of experience. Right. And you can't blame. This is the funny part.
We're seeing it in the transactions all over the place.
Right. So here's where it comes back to the consumer. You can't blame your shitty transaction on the agent when you chose to use somebody and not vet them with experience. And so I'm going to put this in perspective. If you got hit by a car and you're all bandaged up, you got broken legs, and you're in a full body cast, you're not calling Mr. Lerner and Rowe on the bus bench after a horrible accident. And by the way, do you know how much attorneys charge out of your settlement at the end of the day? It's like 33% mm-hmm. of whatever they get.
Yeah.
So you would typically go, okay, well, what's a good injury attorney, accident attorney?
Yeah.
And you're not even really looking at what they're charging. You're looking at their experience and what their win rate is and those types of pieces.
You don't group on it.
Yeah, you don't group on. Right, exactly. So why is it in the real estate industry that the consumer isn't doing
the due diligence?
Doing the due diligence.
Yeah, I mean it's a really fair question. I mean, I think it's twofold. I think that sometimes they just don't even know the questions to ask, and a lot of times they're just not. They think it's an easy gig.
Okay, so let's talk about the questions. That's another one of those things that I was thinking about. I didn't write a whole lot down about this, but it was something I was thinking.
Do.
What are some of the consumer questions that could be asked that are not asked right now?
I think a qualifier is experience and the experience that they can create. Because somebody that's been in the business for a short amount of time compared to somebody that's been in the business for 20 years, you could still get a really good experience or a really bad experience, right? So I think that people have gotten a lot better at presentation in terms of being able to share what the experience should be. Your experience working with me will look like this. You should be able to tell that consumer exactly what they're going to expect from hello to handing over keys or giving away keys, right? And I think that's what you're able to do for people, showing them the big picture. We have to show them what's ahead. And I think that a consumer may not know how to ask that question, right? And they may not know how to say, like, because they just think what you do is charge your 6% and,
open a door, write
exactly,
a contract.
Exactly. So
right.
There's got to be a way to bridge the communication between the two parties.
I do agree with you. Experience can be different even if you're newer in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Your experience could be the mentoring you're receiving by your team or who's backing you, because that's what I had.
Kyle and Eden, right? They haven't been in it very long, but they're providing a much better experience with little time on the clock.
But they also have to know how to sell that experience to get around it, because I had to get around that when I was working for my parents. You have this young kid and you're trying to tell somebody about their house, and you're like, well, how long have you been doing this?
Right.
Well, I've only been
I've
doing
owned
it
this house longer than you, or how old you are.
I've been doing it for a year, but I'm also being mentored by one of the top teams. They're also my parents. That was another thing to get over. But I think that some of the questions right now from a consumer standpoint, I think if you're going to go to look to buy a house, I think you need to be asking the agent a lot of different questions that, how many multiple offer situations have you been in? How many have you won? What's your tactics to winning? How would you advise me on a multiple offer situation? What do you think about paying over appraised value? Like, those are some of the things that are real raw right now. And I just think that that's really important. And, for the consumers out there, I think it needs to be are you having multiple conversations with multiple people to see who's going to be the best guidance for you?
And then collect several different conversations that you can actually create a decision out of. But I also think that, for a consumer, just to keep it super simple, you should be able to ask an agent, walk me through the entire process. An agent should be able to articulate to that consumer what it's going to look like. And that would include all the twists and turns that are happening in any current market, right? So what do you have to be prepared for? What could happen if you're on the buy side? What could happen if you're on the sell side? But I think that's a great place for a consumer if they don't know the exact questions to ask. Like the ones you just said are freaking awesome. But like if they don't know, I would start with, walk me through this. Tell me exactly what's going to happen. What's this going to look like? What's it going to feel like? Like, what do I need to prepare for? And a good agent should be able to articulate the whole thing.
Agreed. And I think also when you're talking about the seller side for the consumer, I think some of the same questions apply. Like, for sure. Hey, what happens when the buyer walks away on the 29th day of this transaction? Where does that leave me?
Yeah. Or what happens with the appraisal, or, all these scenarios
all the worst case scenarios.
There's so many right now.
And I said we were leaving with this, but it keeps going. I actually try to, with my buyers and sellers, when we start going down the process, I actually try to paint the very worst picture possible.
That's, I think, smart.
Like, hey, I was on a Zoom call yesterday with a buyer, like explaining to them, hey, you only have 5% down. You're looking in this area. This is going to be a long process. It's going to be an emotional process, and you may pull back and decide not to buy right now. But I want to make sure you are mentally and financially prepared for the road you're about to walk down.
How much extra money do you have?
It's a question.
It's real. That's what we're seeing. From the escrow side of things, you see a lot of things fall. We see more backup offers being taken in escrow through, because some people do have the money, but they're just refusing. Like, they're like, I'm not going to pay this much more. There's some serious financial issues happening in our market right now, and not financial meaning people don't have money, but just those home prices and appraisals are just in the demand. So,
right.
Well,
here's some takeaways. I think that I think the iBuyers, I think the iBuyers are going to be around.
No, they're always going to be part of our landscape. It's just,
I'm not a big believer in them. I think they're corporations. It's just not my thing. I think that you can work with somebody that knows what they're doing, and you can get that same solution. And when I look at, like, when we provide those solutions, like, for that client, I think the cool thing that I get to promote in that is that, hey, look, I'm keeping
Yeah.
local families employed. We're going to renovate it. You see the situations that we're solving for buyers on the other end. And I'm trying to provide a solution for that person.
Yeah.
And it's not going in some corporation's, bottom line at the end of the day. It's going into it local. I can't always compete with some of their stupid offers. But I can tell you where I compete the best. I compete the
That's
best.
how you really feel. They're stupid offers.
They are. Some of them are just like insane.
Well, don't you think then that maybe a really great piece of advice for consumers, if you're going to get a stupid offer, at least talk to some agents as well and make some comparisons.
Well, stupid offer. I've seen some of the offers and some of the stuff and some of the language, and it's just me. Not that I'm jaded or anything. I'm not angry.
It's so funny. Stupid offers.
Here's what's funny.
We should start a company called Stupid Offers.
Here's what's funny about that is that as agents, we spend so much time, or I don't say we, I say the industry. I could care less about it. I just kind of wanted to bring this up from the consumer standpoint, talking about these people and how it's disrupting the business and everything else.
I hate that word.
Right. And it's really not. It's just another alternative. I mean, We Buy Ugly Houses has been doing it for 30 years. They just
It's just evolution.
didn't do it as sexy.
Yeah.
Right. And
totally.
And I get what they're trying to do is they're trying to make the transaction easier for the consumer. The reality is I don't know that you can make it that easy for the consumer when they're with the amount of variables that are involved with houses and people and situations.
Yeah.
That's why, when we talk about strategies, there's so many different ways to get from point A to point B. And I just think the consumer needs to know all those strategies, not just look at one.
Totally. I agree with that for sure. It's so funny you brought up We Buy Ugly Houses. They've been around forever and they probably make more money.
Probably.
Than the others.
Probably.
They probably keep more money. Anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I just think the most important thing is that a consumer realizes what their options are. So talk to people, right? Talk to people,
And I think that, for those of you that need help or, have a situation like that, that is what I do, reach out to me.
Yeah.
Text me, DM me, let me see what I can do to help to provide that strategy at the end of the day.
You're such a good helper.
Such a good helper. All right, guys, till next time. Peace out.
Bye.